Hi everyone, I'm Cindy Winget, the author of The Apparition, and welcome to my channel. So it's 2 days before Mother's Day, so I thought it would be a good time to do some Mother's Day recs. I'll go ahead and link my other ones from previous years if you missed them at the end. So the first 4 I'm going to be talking about, I'm actually going to be reading myself this month, so if you want to know my thoughts about them, then go ahead and wait for my May wrap-up. So the first one is The Surrogate Mother by Frida McFadden. And this is about this woman who has everything. She has a good career and a great husband, but the only thing missing is she wants a baby. But she has bad eggs and an inhospitable uterus, and she's not able to carry a child. And so they were going to adopt, but 3 weeks before they were supposed to get this adoption, it fell through. And so now they don't have a child, and she's devastated. But she has this assistant that she really adores and is very helpful in her life, and this assistant comes to her and says, hey, I'll be your surrogate mother if you want to go that route. I'll carry a baby for you if you pay for me to go back to school. And so she thinks this is a great idea and would benefit both of them, and she gets her reluctant husband on board, and everything seems hunky-dory. But because this is a thriller, we know everything's not hunky-dory, and she begins to regret her decision to have her assistant be her surrogate mother. And then we have The Perfect Hosts. And this is about a couple who are doing a baby gender reveal. And I'm very excited for this one because you see a lot of online videos about baby gender reveals and they always go wrong. Things get lit on fire, or, people get hurt, or, just crazy things happen, and they've been making them so elaborate. It used to be just cut open a cake and maybe it's pink or blue, but they have to make everything so elaborate and so crazy big and celebratory and stuff, and it's insane. So I think there's going to be a lot of commentary in here about that. At least I kind of hope there is. But basically this couple is having their gender reveal party, and one of the guests ends up being killed at this gender reveal party, and so they're trying to figure out what went wrong and whether it was an accident or whether it was maybe foul play instead. So I don't think this is necessarily going to be a whole lot about babies or motherhood necessarily, but it still has the gender reveal aspect in it, so I think it counts. And then we have Her One Regret, and this is about this woman who became pregnant, but she confided in her friend that she's not really looking forward to motherhood, and she finds it difficult, and she's not really enthusiastic about being a mother, and she sometimes wishes she could just leave it all behind. But then one day she goes missing, and so her friend is like, did she really go missing, or did she just abandon her family? But she deep down really doesn't think her friend would actually do that, and so she is convinced that she actually went missing. So this is a recent thriller that I got from the Book of the Month Club box, so I'm looking forward to it. And then moving on from thrillers, we have Tradwife, and this is a horror novel in the same vein as Rosemary's Baby. And as the name would suggest, this is going to have some commentary about the online presence of tradwives. And I think her husband is misogynistic and everything, which seems a little bit on the nose. I don't believe every tradwife actually has a misogynistic husband, so I don't know if that's what the author is claiming, but it makes it seem like it sometimes. But I shall see when I read it. But anyways, this is about tradwife influencers where everything's beige and everything's perfect and everything's about cooking and cleaning and taking care of your husband and blah blah blah, but I think this is going to have a lot of commentary about influencers and how maybe they're not always authentic to who they say they are, and I'm looking forward to that. And I love Rosemary's Baby, so I'm excited to read another horror book that's inspired by that classic. That's the end of the ones that I'm planning on reading this month. So we have another thriller called Mother's Instinct, and this one is about these 2 families that were neighbors, and they became really good friends, and they got really close, and they happened to have sons around the same time, and so their sons grew up together and became best friends as well, and these families just did everything together. But then one of the sons ends up dying, and it sounds like the other family had something to do with it inadvertently, and so now this other family is seemingly trying to take revenge on their son who is still alive. And so our main character is trying everything she can to keep her son and her family safe. And then we have You Did Nothing Wrong. This is a horror novel, and I just barely read this not too long ago, and I really enjoyed it. And this is a story about a woman who becomes very unhinged, and she's pretty unreliable. So if you like an unreliable narrator, this would be a good one to pick up. But she has this son that is seemingly autistic, and she just newly got married, and so she wants to keep her son and her new husband kind of separate because she doesn't know how her new husband is going to handle her son and his tantrums and his acting out and stuff. But at the same time, she also doesn't really want them to get close because she's kind of an obsessive mother and she doesn't want her son to love her new husband more than he loves her. My camera was yelling at me that I was low on storage, so I'm probably in a slightly different position as before, but that's the reason why. So moving along, we're going to be talking about some Ania Allborn. I never know if it's Ania or Anya, I don't know, but however you say it, I have 3 from her that would be good. She's actually has probably more than that. I haven't read a lot of her books, but you know, she mostly does like familial horror. So pretty much anything she writes would probably be good for Mother's Day, but I just have 3 that I'm going to talk about in this video. So the first one is a Amazon novella called Palmetto. This was the first thing I ever read from her. And this is about this pregnant woman who finds this house of her dreams and she doesn't think she's ever going to be able to afford it, but then lo and behold, she can, you know, as these stories often go, and she gets this house, and it's supposed to be kind of a nod to Rosemary's Baby, but as soon as she moves in and starts taking care of her baby, strange and weird things start to happen that make it not as ideal as she thought. And all I will say is if you're squeamish about bugs, then probably don't read this. I didn't realize that El Palmetto was a bug. I thought it was like a plant. So yeah, if you're squeamish about bug horror, then maybe skip this one, but it was a good one and I did enjoy it. I'm hoping to read a few other short stories or novellas. This month for Mother's Day, I want to read Sour Candy and Blanky, which I both by Keelan Patrick Burke, and then I want to read Pram, which is also an Amazon exclusive. I think that one's Joe Hill that writes that one, so hopefully I'll be reading some other good short stories. So anyway, so then I also want to talk about Good and Joyful Things, and this one was released not too long ago. So this is about this woman who has 2 daughters, but her marriage is not doing very well, and she starts to believe that her husband is cheating on her, and she's also dealing with some postpartum depression, and so she feels like he's not pulling his weight and she's just home by herself with the kids all the time. And at first she thought the 5-year-old would maybe be a helper with the baby, but really she's not, which if you are a mother, you know that yeah, definitely a 5-year-old's not going to be any kind of help with a baby. But anyway, so she's just feeling really down and depressed, and she wants to catch her husband in his cheating ways. But then it sounds like the script might be flipped because it says that he learned secrets about his wife and he starts to believe that she's not the woman that he married. So if you can't tell from the synopsis, I have not read this book yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And another one of hers that I haven't read yet, but I'm also looking forward to is The Unseen. And this is her newest release, and this is about this woman who is grieving the loss of her child, and her and her husband end up adopting this child, but come to find out that maybe this child, I believe it's a girl, okay, it just says an orphan, so I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but I always assume it's a girl. I don't know, probably because of the movie The Orphan. But anyways, whatever the gender, this child seems a little bit off, a little bit weird, and her and her family start to think that maybe this wasn't a good idea after all to adopt this child. And then another book that's dealing with postpartum depression is Full Immersion by Gemma Moore. This is a sci-fi horror, and this is about this woman who, as I mentioned, she's dealing with some postpartum depression, and she's tried therapy, she's tried pills, she's tried everything she could think of, and nothing is working. And so she volunteered for this new experiment. But as is the case with these types of books, things go wrong and she's no longer aware of what's real and what's not, and is losing grip of her reality, and different things go down. And then I'm going to mention one that's pretty obvious, and I guarantee you've probably heard of it, but I'm just going to mention it anyways because it is a good one for Mother's Day, and that would be Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. And this is, I believe, set in the 70s, and it's about these girls who, you know, at the time, if you got pregnant out of wedlock, people were very judgmental about it, and they would often ship their daughters off to have the baby, and then when they came back, then sometimes the child was often their sibling rather than their kid, or they were forced to give up the kid for adoption or different things. So this home is for these young unwed mothers. And I'll admit that this wasn't a favorite of mine. I thought it was really good, but I thought the witch part was pretty lacking in my opinion. And I don't know, I just wanted more witchiness from it. And when the witchiness did start to happen, which was pretty far into the book, it just wasn't speaking to me in the way that I wanted it to. So while I did like this one, and I did think it was a good book and was well written, it just wasn't a favorite of Grady Hendrix for me. But it is a good one for Mother's Day. And then we have Just Like Home. And this is about this woman who does not get along with her mother. They have a very poor relationship with each other, but she finds out that her mother is dying, and so she decides to do the right thing and go and take care of her mother because she's her only child and is the only one that can take care of her. But then there's this man who was an artist who they let stay in their shed out back, but then different things in this house start to happen and things get creepy and sinister. And just like Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, this wasn't a favorite of mine either. I think this was like a 3.5 star for me because there were some aspects of it that were just not really for me, and then I thought the ending was very unique but pretty weird at the same time, and some things got a little bit too extreme for me, like not super extreme. This isn't extreme horror, but I'm not really into torture stuff, and there's stuff that gets just on the edge of talking about torture, and that just makes me squeamish. But anyways, I did like this one, but I didn't love this one, but I know a lot of people did. So if it sounds like it's something you would like, then I would definitely pick it up. And this definitely has a lot about her and her mother's relationship with each other. And then we have Mother Thing, and this is about this woman who moves in with her mother-in-law after she gets married, and they're actually trying to have a child as well. But her mother-in-law, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to like her, and she's very rude to her and cruel to her and doesn't treat her very well. But then she ends up dying and coming back as a ghost and haunting her and her husband. So I haven't read this one. It sounded fantastic and I was really excited to read it, but then I started hearing reviews for it that say it's not really horror, it's a little more literary than that, and it's supposed to be really comedic and stuff, but then other people say it's like really messed up and disturbing. So I don't know, it's one of those books that I kind of wanted to read, but it went off of being like the top of my list to pretty far down on the list, and so I just never got around to reading it. So I don't know, if you've read it, let me know if it is horror, if it's more literary, or what you thought. And then lastly, I want to talk about two thrillers that I have on my Kindle. The first one being Baby Shower by S.E. Lines. And this is a toxic female friendship type book where there's this woman who befriends this other woman, and this woman that has newly come into her life, she kind of sucks everybody into her orbit. So now all of her other friends and family are like so enamored with this woman, and she's starting to think that maybe she's not as great as she initially thought. And she is pregnant at the time, the friend, not her. And so leading up to them having this baby shower for her, she actually finds out that she's pregnant at all, that this is all just a ruse. So she's trying to figure out if she should spill the secret or why her friend would pretend to be pregnant and all of that stuff. And then speaking of toxic friendships, we also have Due Date, and this is about this pair of women who are both pregnant at the same time, and their due date is the exact same date, and so they get excited to like talk about being pregnant and going through the ups and downs together and all of this stuff. But then as it gets close to the due date, one of them just kind of falls off the side of the earth and she can no longer get in contact with her. And so after a while, after the baby's born, she finally gets a hold of her, only for her new friend to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was never pregnant and I don't know who you are. And so she's trying to figure out what is going on. So this is me from the future the next day. There was actually a book that I wanted to include in this list that I completely forgot about, so I'm just inserting it here. And that is The Crash by Frida McFadden. And this is about a pregnant woman who is out for a drive. I can't remember why, but I mean, it wasn't just a dumb reason. Like, she had a legit reason to be driving, even though there was supposed to be a snowstorm headed her way, but she thought she could get ahead of it. But she didn't, and she ends up crashing her vehicle, and then she's rescued by this man who takes her to his house, where him and his wife are going to take care of her until the police can come take her to the hospital because she broke her leg. But she keeps begging and asking, please call the hospital, but nobody ever does, and they keep making excuses, and she starts to realize that maybe she is a prisoner in this house. So this one has very mixed reviews, but for me personally, I loved it. I thought it was a good time, and I think it would be very appropriate for Mother's Day. So that's it. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up to let me know. Please subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined. Bye!